Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1929, A Moment in Time, 11th November 1918. It was on this day in 1918, the 11th of November 1918, and at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, when the armistice was signed between the Allies and the German forces in France. I can't remember the name of the place. I should look that up. So I thought we would take a time out because over the years, this day has kind of transformed. For those in the Commonwealth countries and most allied countries, it's known as either Armistice Day or Remembrance Day. Here in the United States, it got changed to Veterans Day. So to all of our veterans who have served, thank you. We thank you for the freedom that you have fought for us. We thank you for the sacrifices that you guys have made. And we just thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the service that you have given us. To those for Remembrance Day and Armistice Day, for your ancestors that you have, that you now have on this day, we thank the families for the sacrifices that were made during World War I. But this day, the guns were silenced and the end of World War I was on the 11th, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918 in France. So I thought we'd take this opportunity to have a look to see that, did you have anybody who was involved in World War I? What were some of the things that they may have been involved with? Were they actually at the signing of the armistice on the 11th of 1918? How can you find out things about people who were involved with World War I? Well, first of all, you can look at military service records. Look for records for your ancestors who served in World War I. And these are often contain enlistment dates, service locations, any injuries, sometimes photographs, any medals that were awarded, any awards that they accomplished with medals. I know that my hang on. Harry Harper, was he? Yeah, my great-grandfather, Harry Harper, he served in World War I. And he also served in World War II as well. In World War II, he was the captain of Fort Balance, which is a fort that was overlooked the harbor of Wellington Harbor, the entryway there. But I'm not exactly sure what he did in World War I. That I still have to research. So I'm definitely going to be digging into his military service records to see what I can find about his service in World War I. We've got draft registration cards where many countries required men to register for the draft. In the United States, nearly all men born between 1872 and 1900 were registered, even if they never served. These cards can provide valuable personal information, physical descriptions, addresses, next of kin. What else do they have on there? Birth dates, height, weight, eye color. Some draft cards are very interesting to read because it has where they were living, who their employer was, their next of kin was listed on there, their current address was listed there, their birth date was on there, how tall they were, their eye color, their hair color, their body build. I think that was about it. But you can find some very interesting information, and sometimes they had photographs on there too. Very rarely have I seen photographs on them, but I've come across one or two. You can also look at unit histories and regimental records. Researching an ancestor's specific military unit can reveal where they served, battles they fought, and daily life during the war. Many units kept detailed diaries or after-action reports. So you can go, if you know the particular unit that your ancestor served in or the regiment, you'll be able to look up their detailed diaries and reports to see what happened that day. Your ancestor may even be listed in there for something that they did during the day that was notable enough to be put into the diary or the after-action reports. Local war memorials. Many towns have memorials listing residents who served or died in the war. Visiting these memorials or researching them online can help connect ancestors to their local community's contribution. Some of the, like in New Zealand, we have the RSA, which is Returned Servicemen's Association. Some of them have records of the people who are listed on the memorial in the local towns and the communities and the part they played in the community. You may even still find in some places, like in England or Australia, New Zealand, Canada, you may even still find in some places that there are ancestors of those people listed on the local memorials that still live in that area. War-related newspapers, local and national newspapers from 1914 to 1918 often featured lists of soldiers, war stories, and even letters from the front. Newspapers are an excellent source of context about daily life and the impact of war on the communities. I remember when I was going through the New Zealand, what's it called, Past Pages, when I'm going through their newspaper reports, and I'm in that era of either 1914 to 1918 to and then 1930 something to 1940 something for World War II. Sorry, I don't remember the dates for World War II when New Zealand was involved. That they quite often had a list. They would get daily reports from overseas, and they would quite often have a list of if anybody was injured. They wouldn't put in if anybody was killed until families had been notified, and then they were put on the casualties list later on. But there were people, if they were injured, if they were in hospital, if they would be coming home, if they were just there for a few days, that sort of stuff. Photographs and postcards. Many soldiers sent postcards, photos home, which can sometimes be found in family collections or local archives. These items add a personal dimension to the understanding of an ancestor's wartime experience. And some of these photos, some of the photos could be just of the individual, or they could be a group that were in the same unit or regiment, fellow soldiers that they fought with, that sort of thing. There's victory bonds and ration books. Civilian ancestors likely supported the war effort through things like purchasing victory bonds, conserving resources, or working in war industries. Some families still have ration books or victory bond certificates, adding insight into how non-combatants were involved. When they were back home on the home front, there were different ways that people could be involved. There was even, what do they call them? The Home Guard. For those that, for whatever reason, could not go overseas to serve, to be involved with the wars and stuff, they became the people, the front line at home, that would watch over the town or the city at night. They would have roving patrols and things like that, and they had a procedure that they had to do should their town get attacked. And they often ran drills and all of that. And it was made up of volunteers in the local area. Red Cross and volunteer records, there we go. Many women and men were involved with organizations like Red Cross, YMCA, and other wartime services. These records can sometimes be found in local or national archives of people who are involved in these. Immigrant soldiers. Many recent immigrants served in World War I for their new countries, hoping to prove loyalty. And records of immigrant soldiers often have a valuable naturalization information, as service sometimes expedited citizenship. And I will tell you this, from all the research I've done on immigration records and going for citizenship and things, those records are detailed, especially in the States. It not only has the person's name, where and when they were born, who their parents were, and then it has who they immigrated with. So what family members did they bring with them? And they can put if they put their spouse's name, when did the spouse get married? Now, the records I was looking at these times were the woman got citizenship through the husband. So the wives got citizenship through that. They did not have to separately apply for citizenship, because at that time, if the husband became a citizen, the wife and their children automatically became citizens as well. So it had the wife's name, her maiden name, the date they got, and her birth date, and where she was born. I tell you, the immigration records, gold mines. It got also when and where they were married, any children that they brought with them, the birth dates of the children, and the places that the children were married, were born as well. So great source of information. And when you're looking at these immigrant soldiers that came in and then decided to go and fight for whatever country they had just come into, their citizenship would have been expedited at the time, and you can find all of their information in the naturalization records. Pension records and benefits. After the wars, veterans often applied for pensions or benefits. These records may provide details on service, injuries, and the impact of wartime experiences on later life. So that's another way that you can find things as well. There's also times too that you can have a look through military records, where you can find applications for somebody who served to be buried in a military cemetery, or the military portion of a local cemetery or a national cemetery. or if they wanted just if they wanted a military headstone, you can find applications for those as well. Impact of the 1980 flu pandemic. We just went through COVID, a few years ago there. Back in 1918, they have an influenza pandemic. It was a big flu pandemic, which COVID is a type of flu. From 1918 that affected both soldiers and civilians worldwide. Many soldiers died from the flu, and tracing the flu's impact in records such as death certificates can reveal how it affected family lines and communities. So they may not have died in the war, but they may have come home and contracted the 1918 flu. It's okay, sweetie girl. You're all right. It's okay. You're okay. And contracted the flu, and that killed them. They weren't killed in war, but they were killed by the flu pandemic. Then you've got the family stories, and it'll be on their death certificates, great amount of information. That is not yours, leave it alone. That is not a soft toy for you, sorry. There's been little things that have been put around the places we find them, and yes, she's suddenly discovering where Mama has put things. You don't usually get into there. So yeah, the 1918 flu pandemic, you'll see a lot of people there that died from influenza during that time. Go lay down. Go lay down. I know you want dinner. There's also family stories of armistice celebrations on November the 11th, 1918, that were celebrated around the world. Family letters or diaries may mention the spontaneous parades, celebrations, or reflections on the end of the war, giving a first-hand glimpse on that historic day. You may also have relatives that were actually there witnessing the signing of the armistice as it was signed, and you'll find those in records about Armistice Day, about the signing of it, who was present, and things like that as well. So there's a lot of stuff just from one day that you could go and research to find out how it impacted your ancestors and your family from then on. Lots of great information out there. Lots of great records out there. There's fold3.com, which is a site where you can look up military records based on World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. What else is in there? The Civil War, even other wars that were overseas that other countries participated in can also be found there as well. Not all the military records are there, but there's a good majority of them there. And I have found records for my ancestors on this site from when they were in. Oh, I forgot to put the trash can out. Hang on. Note. Put out trash. I totally forgot to put out trash today. For tomorrow. But thankfully, somebody is out there. So now I remember. Sorry. Put that there. So yes, so you can find the military. You can find some military records. For things like New Zealand, I can actually go to the New Zealand Defence Forces and request military records that way as well. I don't know if they still do, but they used to have it where you could request one ancestor. Like I could go and request either my grandmother's records or my grandfather's records a year. So 1 year I could provide the information for my grandmother and they could send me her records. The next year I could go and ask for the records for my grandfather and they could send me those. But you have to be a direct descendant. You have to be a descendant of these people before you can ask for their records. Got angels streaking through the lights again. I can also go back and ask my great-grandfather's records too, and I could get what he did in World War I as well as what he did in World War II. So there's a lot of different places that you can go to get these records. There's a lot of records out there about World War I. Even start looking through, even reading history books about World War I, about Armistice Day, who was there in the room when things were signed, who were some of the key players that put this thing together. You never know who could be in your ancestry unless you go and look. So, get out there, have a look, see what you can find, and let us know if you've got anybody who was actually involved on Armistice Day with the signing of the Armistice document between the Allies and the German forces. See if you've got anybody who was actually there and present during the signing, or maybe involved with that starting to happen and everything else. There was still peace talks that went on after that date, but that was the day that, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, when the guns were silenced. And there were still peace talks that carried on after that initial signing of that document as well. So you can go and look those records up as well, and see if you're related to any of the key players in that. If not, what ancestors did you have out there that may have been fighting? What Where were they stationed? What was their roles in the war and that sort of thing? Did you have anybody that was involved in the 1918 influenza pandemic that went on? Actually, it's almost just over 100 years later that we had COVID. They say history repeats itself. So with that, go out, have a super fantastic. I got I don't know about you guys, I'm seeing little white lights flashing on my screen here as they whiz around, and I'm not seeing any flying insects in here. But anyway, that's it from us for today. So take time to just take a moment, to take a minute or two, just to sit in silence and give thanks for all of those that were involved in World War I, for the signing of the armistice, for those that lost their lives, that we will never forget. Give thanks to veterans. And it's a little late in the day. It's 7:20 here in the evening on Mountain Time. But think of the veterans in your family and go give them a hug or give them a phone call and just say thank you. With that, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific.